not interested in all of what you have to say. I won't undermine your paragraph. Counting seconds, screaming inside, run away. Did you ever listen? Did you ever listen? I'm accepting I can do my best, but you're expecting so much more than what you're giving me. It's impressive, there's no pause of breath. I'm like disturbing, oh God, someone please come set me free. Did you ever listen? Did you ever listen? Did you ever listen? Did you ever listen? How could you leave me out here stranded? It's burning so cold. Where's all the love and understanding? Panic is taking hold.
People didn't tune in for this. A lot of compression. Slapback on my voice. Only I can hear it. You can't.
Did you have a lesson? Did you have a lesson?
All right. Hey, folks. Thanks for tuning in. We are here. Well, I am here. There's no we, unless it's the royal we. I do live in what is affectionately known by itself to itself as the Loyalist City. One of many nicknames the city of St. John has given itself. So called because I don't know why the people who lived here in the 1700s wanted to remain loyal to the British crown, I suppose. I don't actually know the history. I do know that the city of St. John loves giving itself nicknames, distinctions. My wife can tell you more about this than I can. We have the largest above-ground climate-controlled pedway system in North America, which overlooks Canada's widest, steepest main street. Certainly not the longest, but King Street is the combination of widest and steepest. We've got one of the biggest, I don't want to say inner city parks because that's not true. But Rockwood Park here is purportedly bigger than Central Park, maybe Stanley Park in Vancouver. I've been to Central Park. I've never been to Vancouver. What else have we got? Highest child poverty rate in Canada, I believe, per capita within a small geographical area of the south end of the city. Country's largest oil refinery. The family that owns it also has the country's only successful media paywall, I believe. But it's hackable. I'm not going to tell you how. I'll show you, though. All right, so why are you listening to me talk? Well, I had some ideas for a podcast this week, but they did not really come to fruition. I've had a bunch of different things on the go. And so I thought I would rip off Bill Burr and do the thing that he does where he just puts out a podcast where he talks into a microphone, and that's the show. I understand that an important distinction between he and I is that he is a stand-up comedian who gets paid to talk. People buy tickets to go and listen to him talk into a microphone. And I am a drummer who owns a microphone. And people tune into my show because I have interesting guests, which I don't have at all this week. But rather than leave you hanging and not put anything out at all, I thought I would fill you in on what I've been up to and give you my thoughts on what's, happening. I have not really, I've tried not to worry too much about not having a show lined up. I've been kind of going through these phases of I'll kind of bank a bunch of episodes and not record any new ones while I slowly release those, and then I run out, which is what happened this week. I was hoping to have something lined up. That didn't happen. I had a few other ideas, but didn't really have time to execute them. So, whatever. But I've been reading a book about having abundance in your life, and one of the things they tell you to tell yourself is, say, I have so much time and so little to do. I have so much time and so little to do. Things have been busy at work. I was in Halifax on the weekend very briefly. I left work at 2:45, got in the car, picked somebody up in Moncton, rideshare styles, got to Halifax at 7:30 for an 8 o'clock rehearsal for a show I'm playing in a couple of weeks with my band Valerie. We're playing the Flourish Festival in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada on Saturday, the 27th of April at Wilzer's Room with BB Cutie. I'm not sure who else, but it should be a fun show. This is our second rehearsal since the fall. I moved to St. John in September of last year. Thought I might have to quit the band, but we're not so busy that I can't do it long distance. Although it's easy to not get around to it, the rehearsals. But it went well. We've got a couple new ones lined up, a new song and a new cover. You'll have to go to the show to find out what those sound like. I'm not going to tell you. But then we did that. I just hung out by myself and watched concert videos on YouTube of Radiohead and the Smiths, and I can't remember who else. I watched Radiohead playing on Jules Holland, playing Paranoid Android. And it was cool watching it with headphones in because it actually is a stereo mix, so you get all of Johnny Greenwood's guitar and keyboard in your right ear. And it's a funny thing watching, especially that song, 20 years after the fact. It's weird that it was a single at all. It's weird that it was a hit. And just the fact that that the kind of sort of like emo prog nerd rock that they were doing was as big a deal as it was. Not that they are an untouchable live band as far as I'm concerned. So you can't knock it on that level. And, I know people, and they tend to be like rockers who really dislike Tom York and maybe the band in general. And there's a while where I was kind of sensitive about that, but now watching it, I get it. I mean, he's super weird. If you don't like his singing style, I certainly understand that. I guess, or I can wrap my head around it. But what I would say is you can't deny that guy's commitment to what he's doing. He's standing there in front of the band with his eyes closed, just putting everything into the song and into the microphone. The guitar playing is super amazing, and they are so tight. And I watched the Smiths doing "Barbarism Begins at Home," live version from the early '80s, which is like a 10-minute long kind of It's almost like a disco tune, almost like a funk tune. A lot of fast picking in that song. Reminds me of the Sadies, actually. The Sadies have a similar kind of a thing that they do where it's like a lot of fast, like 16th note kind of picking. I wonder if that's where they got the idea. I don't know. Anyhow, I slept in, kind of hung out for a minute, and hit the road, and then was back here to St. John. What did I do that night? I watched a movie, The American Meme, on Netflix about influencers, and it gave me a lot to think about, especially just with regard to what I'm doing here with the podcast and kind of like this Learn Drums identity that I've created. I have been taking a break from Instagram, which is really where the brand, for lack of better terms, has lived. For lack of a better terms, is that what I just said? I'm trying to keep the like smacking noises to a minimum, so I pull the mic away from my mouth if I got to do that. So I had this idea several years ago when I was living here in St. John, playing in a band out of Halifax, working days in the box office at the Imperial Theatre. More on that later. To make a website that would be like learndrums.ca, I had this idea, and I was like, whoa, nobody has taken this. So I registered the domain like a year before I ever did anything with it. And the idea was initially to be like a virtual, like my first bunch of drum lessons. So I've been teaching drums since 2006, and I kind of fell into it. Just working at the music store. It was Music Stop and then became Long and McQuaid. And over time, I really didn't know what I was doing when I started, but over time, you discover that you really are teaching like beginner drum lessons over and over and over again. Not a lot of people are serious enough about it to really progress far. So as somebody with like, some education and some experience, it's not hard to stay ahead of most students because most people, like most kids, just don't care about it as much as I do. And I had a tough time with that when I started. I used to get really frustrated with kids who would show up and like their parents had bought them a drum set and put them in lessons and they didn't care. Just me thinking like myself, I would have killed for that at that age. I didn't have drums myself until I was in high school, and I never had. I took a couple of lessons from the prof at UPI when I was auditioning for universities, but and I had a couple lessons from my uncle, who was a drummer when I first started when I was like 11. But outside of that, I had never really had kind of formal instruction on the instrument. So I would get really frustrated and honestly jealous of these kids. And also there was like this like weird fear that, this kid is going to be so much better by the time he's my age than I am, or she. But that never materializes. And if you eventually learn that if that was going to happen, it just is going to happen. It's not fair that people have YouTube now. We didn't have that when I was a kid. I have so many advantages in life that other people don't have, so whatever. It's not fair. C'est la vie. So anyway, I eventually became very good at teaching somebody their first few months of drum lessons just because I've done it so much. And so I thought what I could do as a way of getting students, because I moved and walked away from a full schedule into like I had like 5, and then I had to find another job where for 6 years I'd been able to make most of my living just teaching drum lessons. I would do other things on the side, especially because the way they have it set up, you get paid once a month. And you are self-employed, so you're supposed to withhold money for your taxes, which I never did. Um, so it's easy to go broke doing that. People take the summers off. You know, you lose a week for March break. You lose a couple weeks for Christmas. You don't get compensated for that. You're not an employee. You're self-employed. There's no benefits. There's no, you can't draw EI in the off season. So it's nice to do something else that pays you a little bit more frequently, and maybe you get tax taken off. So ideally, it doesn't take such a big bite out of tax time. But so I thought, using my experience, I would put together this like first few drum lessons, and it would be a good tool for, people could find that and then sign up. And then when they've gone through that, I thought maybe I would do video lessons or something. But also, it would be a thing that by the time people went through that and showed up to take actual lessons, they'd be a little bit more advanced, and they would be ready to learn stuff that I was more interested in working on myself. Anyhow, I registered the domain name, looked into a little bit, discovered Drumeo, which I don't even know what that is, but it is the thing that I thought about doing, except they have lessons with professional drummers from all over the world, people you've heard of, people who play with big names. It's kind of like Netflix for drum lessons, but it's I think it's $35 American dollars a month, so it'd be like 45 Canadian or something. And you pay your subscription fee, and you sign in, and you learn as much. It's like a gym membership. You have complete access, and you learn as much as you care to. As with, real life drum lessons, your success is largely determined by how much time and effort you put in. It's always the thing with drum lessons, and a thing that I used to get frustrated by, especially with adults who would take lessons that are an hour long, and they would want to fill that hour with information, when really you have to look at it as, what am I going to be able to get done this week? You can't, in an hour a week, you're not really going to make major gains. It's like going to the gym once a week and really working hard. Like, yes, you will improve, but not as much as if you have a regular workout routine and you hit it every day, every other day. You're switching up exercises and you're working really diligently at it. That's how you're going to get in shape. And then you meet with your trainer once a week. You assess where you're at, your progress, and then that person can kind of help you figure out what to work on next, or point out anything that maybe you're not quite doing right. That's how to get the most out of that. But I would often find, you show up and a guy wants to learn a bunch of stuff, and you spend 10 minutes working on some exercise, and like, all right, what else you got? And you do that 6 times because it's an hour. And then you show up the next week, and it's okay. Did you work on that stuff? No, not really. So it's so much information. They're not ready for anything new. You really need to kind of work on this stuff before you're ready for the new thing. So anyhow, long story short, I am not a programmer or web developer. I don't have a studio where I can record drums or a set of mics. I don't really have the budget to invest in that stuff up front. So that idea did not take place. What I did do is I launched a Tumblr site after I lost my job. And I called it learndrums.ca. It was just basically an online ad for drum lessons. And then I moved from Tumblr to Squarespace. I had some experience with Squarespace. Who maybe I should hit them up to sponsor my podcast. I'm plugging them right now. But it's an easy to use, great looking web platform, folks. And it was a better looking website, and there's e-commerce and all of that. So had been doing research on like online business, blah, blah, blah. And like, maybe you need to make a package of courses. So I put these things together. Nobody ever took me up on them. There was like an online booking calendar that did get used a couple of times. Ironically, it like got used so rarely that I would forget about it, and then I would make plans to do other things and forget to block it off on the calendar. And that's when I would get appointments booked. It happened a couple of times that I would, have plans to go away, and then I get an email that says you have a new lesson scheduled at this time, and it's not anyone else's fault. I forgot to block it off. But that's when I was living in Halifax and didn't have a job, and then I got a part-time job, and then I moved away from Halifax, and I am no longer even in a situation where I really want to be advertising drum lessons. I got a teaching gig, which is a day a week, which I'm cool with not really teaching more than that. I've been doing it a long time. When I moved back to Halifax in 2016, I got out of the teaching game altogether for what turned out to be 6 months, but it was nice to take a break from it. Not that I don't mind doing it. Sometimes I really like it, but when it's your job, when you're trying to scrape together an income doing that, that means you are working with whoever wants to show up and pay you. And they're just not always as interested in the subject matter as I am. And it's a lot of work trying to find those people. So I would always, I feel like this is coming off as elitist or something, but what can often happen is parents put their kids in lessons. The kids don't really want to be there, and then I have to spend my time convincing them that this is something they can do or something that they want to do. And it's more about that than it is about actually working on the thing. And I guess I would say that's where my frustration with that comes from. If anything, is that if the job was just to like work on drumming or work on, I teach guitar and piano lessons too. And if the job was just to work on playing music with people, I would love it. But the job is more often about figuring out what somebody is, what somebody's blocks are to achieving whatever they're trying to do. Often it's mental, and often they will fight you if you point that out. So it can be kind of a struggle to get there with people. And I would rather, if somebody doesn't want to be there, if somebody thinks they're doing fine and they don't want me to tell them how to improve, it's not fun to argue with them. And if that's the gig, I don't know. I don't love that. I would rather, play music and work on the actual thing than work on figuring out why somebody doesn't want to do the thing and how I convince them that they do want to do it because their parents are paying me and they expect something. So anyhow, I had my website became kind of a blog. My friend Caleb told me that Learn Drums was available on Instagram, and so I started using that to try and advertise her drum lessons. I realized that the people who were following, with one exception, one notable exception, this guy, can I say his name? No, I won't mention his name, but this guy hit me up for drum lessons, and his family ran a dry cleaning business, and I actually exchanged free. We bartered. I got my wife's wedding dress dry cleaned and pressed in exchange for a bunch of drum lessons. And that was good because she was paying my rent while I was trying to figure this out. Then I got a job at a coffee shop, and then we moved, and now I just have a job, and I live in an apartment. I can't teach drum lessons out of here anyway. And I don't really know what the brand is for a while. In the early part of this year, as you may know, I did a bunch of little drum instructional videos, and it was fun, but it also became really stressful. Where it was kind of an off the cuff idea on January 1st. I was like, maybe I'll do a daily thing and, post drum tips. And kind of the more I discovered about making these videos and using the app, the more I wanted to do. And so they became longer, more involved. I was editing them all on my phone, which if you've ever tried to do that, it's really hard to pinpoint the part of a video where you want to cut it off, and Instagram has limits on how long your videos can be. It would reject my uploads a lot. And, every time I would put one out, I would see kind of how limited it was, and I would want to make the next one better. And I also didn't really have a plan. I would just do them off the cuff. So I would need to edit the videos because I would spit out whatever I was thinking about a subject, and then I would stare at the wall for a minute while I tried to think of the next thing I was going to say. And that's not interesting to watch. So those make natural cut points. But if you've got a 10-minute long video of that, and then you're trying to edit it and piece it together on your phone, and then your phone refuses to upload the thing once you've finally done it, it becomes very frustrating, and you got to do it every day because you've committed yourself to this. So the podcast is kind of a similar thing, where I quite like doing it. I don't always feel like I have time for it. It does take up a lot of time to do, which again, I don't mind, but I would say like 6 to 10 hours on average for an episode between lining it up, doing the actual interview, sitting down, editing it, uploading it, making promo clips. If you do follow my Instagram at learndrums, I like to make those little headliner videos where you take a clip of somebody talking and you cut it up and it shows the words on the screen. But that takes a while. That's like probably an hour right there to do it. And you got to upload it, publish it, promote it. And to make it a weekly thing is I just am not that disciplined, I guess. I like to do it when I have time, but when I have other things going on, it's hard to make it all fit, I guess. So what have I got going on? I am rehearsing tonight with a new band. So I was playing on the weekend with Valerie, Valerie's a shoegaze band. I play the drums. Me and my friend Palmer Jameson, who I know from the band Buttes, who I filled in with a little bit when I was living in Halifax most recently. Sean McNally, who is actually from my... not exactly my hometown, but we went to high school together. I grew up in the country outside of Summerside, PEI. Sean is from Summerside, which was, I didn't know he was in the band until I showed up for the first rehearsal. Kayla Stevens, who's in a bunch of other bands. She's in Crossed Wires, Vulva Culture. She's got a solo project called Hosta. She had a band called Science Project. Then she's got another new band on the go. Caleb Shriver, who's a bud from Moncton. He's worked 2 of my previous jobs. He knew my younger brothers before he knew me, I think. He worked my job at Halifax Pop Explosion a year or 2 after I did, and then when I quit the coffee shop that I was working at most recently, he took it over and works there to this day, and I stayed at his house on the weekend. So anyway, that was cool. We're playing at Flourish in a couple weeks, which is going to be a lot of fun. I had proposed to the band that if we're playing in Fredericton on the Saturday, I could get us a show here in St. John on the Friday. And so I booked a night at Taco Pica. And then it became apparent that the rest of the band wasn't going to be able to make the Friday show. So I was going to cancel it and then hung on to it. And I'm doing a DJ show with my friend Jeff McLennan, St. John record collector of note. So we're going to do a vinyl night. And it's going to be really fun. He's got a lot of whacked out records, and we're going to play some pretty weird music. So that's going to be cool. That's on the Friday before. So Friday the 26th, I want to say, we're playing a Taco Pica, doing weirdo vinyl DJ night. And then the next night, I'm playing a Flourish in Frederickson with Valerie. And then a few days later, I'm doing a solo act opening for my friend Aaron, a.k.a. Rote, and this band Caribou Run from Ontario, who I'm not really familiar with, but they're playing Flourish. So my solo thing is called Beach Chair, and it's just me and a guitar and my songs. I get a bunch of electronic stuff. I don't know if I'll bring it all, but it's pretty fun. So I got a drum machine and a looper and a bunch of pedals, and it fills out the songs a bit. It doesn't replace a band necessarily, but it offers some of what a band does. I do find the groove a little bit weird playing with the drum machine, to be honest, and I guess I tend to like slop it up on the guitar in a little bit of an exaggerated way just to bring some of that human feel to it. Because the drum machine is just so straight. It's cool sometimes, and it's cool you can program it to do things that a human drummer couldn't do. But because the groove is just so straight all the time, it can feel weird to play along with after a while. Or like it's rigid and it's kind of limiting. So I'm also rehearsing tonight with a new band, which is like a second wave ska band, I guess. I think that's what that's called. It's like the British kind of ska bands inspired by, but also 60s stuff. I'm not overly familiar with that material, but these folks needed a drummer, and we've had one rehearsal so far. It's been pretty fun. So it's like the Specials, the Style Council. We're doing a Dandy Livingston version of A Message to You, Rudy. So it's cool stuff, and I was kind of surprised to discover I knew more of the songs than I thought I did. Making plans for summer. I saw Colin James last night. So I work part-time at the Imperial Theater. Oh, here's a kind of a funny one. People bag on St. John, and people don't really know the scene here, but there are some, because of the I was going to say desolation, but that's really not the word I'm looking for. But like the poverty and the kind of vacancy, there are some cool spaces that are available in the city, and some opportunities if you are, I don't know if I would consider myself a hustler, but anyhow, I work in the box office part-time, so I can sneak myself into shows. And last night, Colin James played there. I was working the show, and I watched about a half hour of it. Now, Colin James is not somebody I have ever liked. I've never been a fan of his music. I often find him really annoying when he comes on the radio. And maybe it was, I don't know, maybe it was label pressure, maybe it was the time. I know I was reading the PR blurb for his new album, which is a blues album. And it was talking about how he's made a blues record. Well, hasn't Colin James always played the blues? Well, not really. In the 80s, they wanted him to make pop hits because that was the climate. Then he did his little big band album well before the swing revival of the late 90s. Your Brian Setzers or Johnny Favorites or what have yous. Royal Crown Review. The Daddy's Band with the gross name. Which at 93, I guess he put that out. But anyhow, it's not for me, man. That song, like the Sule, pew, pew, Lover, Papa Lover, Papa Lover, Papa Lover, Papa Love You. I just thought he was such a cheese ball. But I mean, live, it's funny. You see somebody live, and it's kind of a different story. It humanizes them in a way, and I was able to look at this guy as a gigging musician who speaks best through his guitar. And he's doing shows trying to make a living, man, and he's a pro. It was a pretty hot band. Lefty drummer. He came up through the crowd. He had a wireless guitar going on. Quite a good guitarist. Stage banter was not really happening, which I was sort of surprised by. For somebody who's been in the game as long as he has, but I also kind of respected that, which is he wasn't like really a smooth showbiz guy in that way, in that he would start to tell stories and then they would kind of trail off, or he didn't really know how to build them. So I actually found that endearing. In kind of the same way of like, I remember watching my friend Gavin, my old bandmate, had sent this video of this Keith Urban song. It was like John Cougar, John Deere, John 316. I think it was like everything in life I needed to know. I learned from John Cougar, John Deere, John 316. Is that the maybe same song where he's like, I'm an all-star quarterback making out with the prom queen in the backseat of a Chevy? And like jeans are like every country music cliche. I'm sorry, but as a listener, you're not even going to hear this. If you listen to that kind of music, you're not listening to the show, most likely. But how do you not feel insulted by that? How do you not feel like this guy is making fun of me? This is how dumb he thinks I am, that I'll just listen to beer and trucks and Jesus and guns. Maybe not guns, but maybe guns. Cold beer, going drinking some fish on a Friday night, going fishing at the fishing hole. Everything's all right in my Chevy or my Ford truck. I mean, I don't know. Please let me know in the comments. You can't. There's no comments. Maybe I'll make a blog post on my website, learndrums.ca, and I'll leave the comments open. You can comment there. Do you not care? Does that not bother you? I'm also maybe more of a picky listener. Like I get burnt out on stuff faster than some people. There's a lot of songs I never need to hear again. That I know I certainly have friends who find comfort in that, who will just listen to the same things over and over and over again. I'm always looking for something new. Whether that's good or bad, I don't think it's good or bad. I think people just have different styles. But in that particular case, like I do think part of it is, as a new artist, if it's that prescribed in terms of what the genre is, what the scene is, the more closely you can hew to what the accepted style is, the easier it's going to be for you to get to kind of sneak into the playlist, to be heard alongside of what's already popular. If you're really different, and I know this because my band went through this problem for our entire existence, people told us that they thought the band was good, but they just didn't really know what to do with it. Like industry people, booking people. When we worked with a kind of a local indie label early on, they said, like other bands, we know what kind of shows to book them on, but you guys, we're not really sure where you fit. And that's a problem. We always thought it was our job, especially as the kind of music listeners and fans we were, we thought it was our job to be as creative as we could. People don't want that necessarily. And, ultimately your job is to be entertaining, or how's this? I was going to tweet this, but nobody looks at my Twitter and I don't like using it. How did it go? I had this joke. People who graduate from music school think that it's their job to make something that's really interesting to other music students when actually their job is to serve you a latte. Eh? But it was that kind of thing where you're in this environment um, where you become, even if that's not your intention at the outset, because I know it certainly wasn't for me. I went to university and signed up for a jazz program, not really knowing much about it, but all my friends were going to school. Like, I would have, if there was a path to just playing in a band and not being in school, that's what I would have done 100%. But all my friends that I was like playing in bands with were all going off to university. So it's like, well, what am I going to do? Hang out at my parents' house in rural PEI while my friends are off at school having fun? Probably not. I wanted to go and do my own thing. So I guess like if I got to go to school, I want to go to school for music. And what can I get into music school with? Well, the drums. I play the drums in school music class, and that's that. So that's what I did. But I wound up in a jazz program. I've talked about this. I've complained about this a million times. Not so much because I really wanted to be a jazz guy, although I thought, if I could get a job at being like Buddy Rich or something, being the drummer in like a big band, sure, I would do that. Why not? But it wasn't my real interest. But what happens is you're in this fake environment, especially there because going to St. FX where I did, it's like learning jazz in the woods. It's not like you're in, if you go to McGill or Concordia or something, you're in the city of Montreal. You go to Humber, you're in Toronto. You go to Juilliard, you're in New York, or Berkeley, you're in Boston. Places with I want to say actual music scene. There was a bit of a music scene in Antigonish, but it was so weird because it was jazz students and jam bands. And my experience up to that point, growing up in Summerside, I just thought that everyone my age listened to punk and metal because that had been my experience. And then when I went there, I discovered that almost nobody did. And it really was so weird to me. But at that point, you're there. What are you going to do? But anyhow, you get into this bubble where you are rewarded for playing this music that really you need a music degree to understand. And what makes it interesting, like only somebody with a lot of education in the subject would really understand what makes it interesting versus just sounding weird. And then, so going from that to playing for the public, you still think that that's your job when really your job is just to entertain a room full of people. But I think it's kind of the way that live music has gone in the last couple of decades too. Even like the punk bands that we were into had that sort of thread running through them. And stuff that maybe got us excited, normal people weren't able to relate to in the same way. Why am I talking about this? I don't remember. Oh, country music. Right. All that to say, I'm a much pickier listener than the average person. So maybe people just don't care. It's easy entertainment, background. There's lots of kinds of music that are stylized, and people all sing about the same things. In fact, you could say every music that is a discernible genre has got shared aesthetics between artists and shared subject matter between artists and ways of talking about things. So whatever. What else? I watched the season premiere of Game of Thrones. It was cool, I guess. I don't know. Do I really care? This is the thing that I thought about while watching Colin James too. Was like, yeah, it's like no question they're a good band. He's a good guitarist. It didn't. I liked him on stage more than I've ever liked hearing him on the radio. But it didn't take me all the way. And I don't know if it's because it just is not totally my thing musically, or because I'm getting older and just I'm less kind of governed by these intense emotions that are just like batting me around all the time. Maybe I just will never feel that excited about music again. I don't know. I'd say I found Lauryn Hill still pretty exciting still when I saw her show a couple years ago. Colin James, better than expected. Not 100% my thing. But and as watching, I also was wondering, like, it just made me want to go and play music on my own. That has not waned really. Like, if you get in the zone, and you catch a vibe, that is still as exciting as ever. But I find that always works, while watching other people play only sometimes works. And maybe they're not bringing it enough. I don't know. But Game of Thrones, I felt similarly about, in that I don't know if I care about any of the characters or the storyline. They know how to build tension. They have to. That's how you become a successful TV show. And then obviously there was the fire at the Notre Dame Cathedral, which is sad. I heard a guy on CBC this morning. The CBC this morning, if I had a girlfriend, she'd kill me. Architectural historian talking about how it's been damaged through the years. That made me feel better. I went there a couple of years ago. Really quite an amazing building. Structure. Really cool. I was really saddened to hear that news. Maybe you want to go back to Paris, man. Have you ever been to Europe? Europe's great. I know they've got their problems. Paris especially, man, it felt seedy there. Everywhere. We got off the train and kind of walked to our hotel, and people had told us there was, like, in the area where we were staying, there was like kind of all these tacky wedding stores and panhandlers on the street. And it just, like, much more so than in London, and maybe because I'd been to London a few times before, and so it had started to feel familiar by that point. But we took the Eurostar from London to Paris. And by the way, like, you can take a train for a couple of hours and go from London to Paris, these like global centers, which here in the Maritimes, I can drive for an hour and a half, and that will take me from St. John to Moncton. Halifax is 4 hours. It's a different world, I tell you. But that's not, I guess, unlike, the U.S. Once you get down to like Boston, New York, Philadelphia area, stuff is closer together than it is here. We're just really remote here in the Maritimes, which is part of what I wanted to do with this show. Let's go on that tangent for a second. This season, I found I was less interested in just talking about drums with drummers. I like to play the drums. I like to do other things too. I don't need to make my entire identity being drum guy. And honestly, I just have had enough of it. It also is like why chops, I just don't care about it anymore. There was a time in high school where I was pretty interested in that, but it's like you go through the experience of, especially the experience that I had of like getting really kind of drilled on it and getting burnt out on it, and then being the drummer and all of the kind of baggage that goes along with being the drummer, which I didn't really anticipate any of it. I just wanted to play it because it seemed like a fun instrument. I didn't know about kind of the role in the band and gear, etc. So I thought it would be more interesting and more along the lines of what I'm interested in, both intellectually, like what I like to think about, but also I think a more useful show for people to listen to would be a show about like people making music in the Maritimes. Like, how do we do it? Why do we do it? I think there could be, a sharing of information this way. And also people getting profiled who otherwise might not. But yes, Paris felt much seedier than London did. You just didn't feel safe in the same way. And everywhere you go, there's beware of pickpocket signs. Near the Eiffel Tower, people say, like, don't talk to the street vendors. Watch out for pickpockets. That stuff is everywhere. And we actually got chased down the street. Jane was looking at, there was a rabbit, just kind of like, there was, let's say, a stone fence. It was about a foot thick. So this rabbit was sitting on top of it. And she's like, oh, look, a bunny. And she took a picture on her phone. And then this dude comes running up at us, yelling, and he's yelling in French. And at first, neither of us understood what he was saying. And then he starts going, delete that picture, delete that picture. Like, what? And I didn't see this. I was focused on this dude who was like going after her, but I guess his buddy had come up and started hitting the rabbit. And so the rabbit was like their business, I guess. And so she started walking away and he's chasing after. He's like, oh, yeah, because he was yelling and we're looking at him. We're like, huh? And then he goes, money, money. And then he points to this plate with like coins in it. And so she starts walking away, goes, delete that picture. And I gave him 30 cents. He left us alone. But it was weird because he was really like upset, as though he had some right to be upset because here he was, a legitimate businessman just trying to make an honest living, and these ignorant tourists were trying to take a picture of his rabbit for free. There's no sign. There's no nothing. He wasn't even around. But that was Paris. But we did go to the Notre Dame Cathedral. We also went to the top of the Eiffel Tower. Really beautiful city. We stayed in Montmartre or nearby. There's a big kind of old stone church up there with a really kind of beautiful vista over the city. I would go back, definitely. And I just love that you can take trains all over the place. It's something I wish we had here. I mean, we do have Via Rail, but it's slow and expensive and doesn't go everywhere. I'd love to be able to take the train to Fredericton from St. John. It's an hour by car. I understand why they don't have that service. We just don't have the population density to make it work. But, man, it would be cool. I don't know if I have anything else to talk about. I got to go to work. Quality Block Party is in St. John this weekend. Going to be a bunch of shows going on. I'm going to go to them. I got a bunch of books I got to take pictures of and sell them on eBay. I've been getting into eBaying a little bit. Pro tip, you can buy books 10 for $1 at the Restore here in St. John. And then, I mean, if you've got a good eye, some of them are worth as much as like $20. On average, they tend to be worth more like $5. But if you do the math on opening a little eBay store, you will make about the same as you would working actual retail. So as much as you want to work, you can make some extra cash that way. I've had some success with that. And even though, like, I sold a drum machine worth, what did I make? I guess shipping in, it was almost $200. But it's exciting when somebody buys your thing. So, an armload of books. But the problem with books is, like, I've got a good eye for stuff that I think is interesting. But I brought home 2 bags full, and then half of them I want to read. I don't want to part with. The other half, I don't care. I've either already read them or I'm not going to. I got a copy of Bill Burr's book. I give you a good deal on. I don't need to read it. Okay, thanks for listening, folks. I will have guests next week. What are we up to here, time-wise? How long have I been talking for? Oh, my God, almost an hour. Wow, okay. All right. Well, look out, Bill Burr. Here we go. Thanks again. Talk to you next week. Oh yeah, and I included the whole the version of my song with lyrics this time around. The Panic song, which was my first. I recorded that in 2 days after I worked at the Pop Explosion, and Glory Glory had broken up. I after the festival, we took a week off, and I was so exhausted. I was like working till 5 a.m. every day. I didn't leave the house pretty much for a week, but over the course of 2 days, I put this thing together and was really excited. At the end of the second day, I was like, "Whoa! I could actually release this." I could just record it and have it sitting on my hard drive, or I could put it on. Maybe I put it on SoundCloud. And people could hear it now, which I did. I was really excited about it. And that would be the first song from the current incarnation of my solo project. It is the only one that really sounds like it does. And if you think it sounds like the Foo Fighters, you are not wrong. The chorus is a direct ripoff of the song Alone and Easy Target from the first Foo Fighters album. So Dave Grohl, I guess you get a writing credit there, but it's a funny thing because a few songs since then have come out sounding like the Foo Fighters, and it's not something that I've intended to do. I definitely loved that band during the first 2 albums when I was in junior high. Since then, from the third album on, it has just kind of gradually declined to the point where I don't care anymore. But for whatever reason, stuff that I write comes out sounding like the Foo Fighters. Now, I heard somebody talking on, or maybe somebody told me this, like that when you draw, if you stop learning to draw and like really working on it and getting better at it, you don't become worse. You just stay at the same level you were at when you stopped doing it. So it may be that for me and songwriting, even in terms of the vibe of stuff that I tend to write, it does reflect what you listen to, obviously, but I think there are also, as in my case, some Arrested Development where I've always been the drummer in bands, which means you're playing songs that other people have written. Even when I would write parts myself, and I didn't write finished songs really ever. I would write parts and riffs and things. So I've never kind of gotten that stuff out of my system, the 90s power pop. Although, like, I don't know, Courtney Barnett had a new song on the radio today. Although it's funny, I kind of worry about her. But I really like her music. And she sounds like she's from the 90s. So do Partner. So do lots of people. Idols, have you heard that band? They're great. I really like that band. I've only know the latest album, Joy as an Act of Resistance, but really like it. Checked out the new Anderson .Paak record on the drive home. It's cool. My prediction was right. I heard the first song with Andre 3000 and was like, he made a double album. And he split it up into 2 parts, and that's exactly what he did. Oxnard came out, and it was a bit of a shock because it was so hip-hop, and it was so, like, the vibe was pretty different from Malibu. I know people who listened to it and really liked it. And, I mean, it is musically undeniably good, a lot of it, especially that bass player, man. I think the bass player is my favorite member of that band. Secret Weapon Styles. He's so good. But a couple of people I've spoken to were like, yeah, I had to sort of adjust my expectations or make an adjustment to listen to Oxnard because the vibe is different, but it just is so good. But that was like the hip-hop side of what he does, and then because the new album is all R&B. So I really think they recorded a double album, and one side of it was the rap record, and the other side was the R&B record. And funny to have Andre 3000 open up the R&B record when he famously did that Speaker Box, The Love Below double album with Outkast. Anyway, the new one's all R&B stuff. It's good. Good playing all around. All around you, it's All around you, I'm surrounded like a circle in a loop. If you come to my show on Tuesday, the 30th of April at Taco Pica, you get to hear that for like an hour. No, that's just a joke. I'll actually sing like I'm trying. I mean, you heard it at the top of the show. If you're still listening, thank you so much. Let's cut it off here. Was that song Chantal Kraviazik? I think that one that I sang. If you are a Canadian and you listened to the radio in the 90s, you will recognize it. Okay, bye for now. Thanks for tuning in. Next week, we'll have a fun show for you where we talk with other people who are not me, musicians, music scene people. Bye-bye.